All right, and welcome everybody, and we're glad you're here. You certainly, we would be happy for you to subscribe to the channel. The name of the channel is Patrick Gray. That's the YouTube channel. This is the Bing screensaver. We're doing a set of YouTube videos about a heavy lift drone, a military drone. And we're discussing the control panel. It's my thinking it would be nice if they could have a control panel for all of these military drones. These are military drones that are heavy lift and carry people, where that control panel is the same, so that if you became skilled at flying the drone, you could move from drone to drone with no problems. And of course, we're talking about heavy equipment that could hurt somebody. Any physically real object could possibly hurt someone or cause damage. We advise do not make any physically real object if you cannot manage it in a manner that is legally allowed and reasonable and safe. So we're a design and concept, and if you want to make one of these, you have to do it in a proper fashion. And we're talking about heavy lift drones. These are drones where the power supply to the propellers is using hydraulic motors. We're going to have a discussion as part of this demonstrating that hydraulic motors can be used to make a stable hover. But this section, this video is just some of the drones. And we're gonna, again, these are heavy lift military drones. So here's our person that's the size of a human. This person is 6 feet tall. Here is 500 pounds of water, just to give you some idea of how big that is. The drone is designed to use wings because fixed wing flying is so much more efficient than what I call drone flying. Drone flying is when you're just going up based on your propellers. It does have legs. This is a very basic, simple drone. It lands on its tail end and it takes off going straight up. As it goes up, it folds up its legs and now it's up in the air and flying along. And this is the little small drone. This size up here, it's about 12 feet long. It's 4 feet by 3 feet by 4 feet. It can lift 500 pounds. This is the little drone. And it can go from 0 to 9,000 feet in 15 minutes. It can fly at 70 miles per hour at 9,000 feet altitude for 7 hours. It uses the Rolls-Royce Allison 250-C28 turbo shaft jet engine. This is a view looking at, there's 4 drones that we want to discuss. We showed the little drone. Now we're going to do a bigger drone. This is in key shot because I think key shot is just pretty to look at, and it renders it. And every time we move it, it has to re-render it. So be aware of that. It's not as pretty when we move it. And we're, again, I just think it's a prettier drawing program. Here we have, this was the little drone that we just showed you. This is the one, it's got, I think, we're showing the turbo shaft jet engine in the little drone. And over next to it is the next drone size up. This distance was 12 feet. This distance is 17 feet. It's 7 feet wide. It's 4.5 to 5 feet tall. It's tall enough that 2 people can sit in it. Actually, a few more people could be back here. It has 2 of the Rolls-Royce Allison 250 jet engines in it, turboshaft jet engines and the 6 propellers and the 4 legs that come down. It's just a bigger version of this little drone. And again, every time we move this, we have to wait. So I do have some images that I created by rendering. And this is a image file that was created using that rendering program. So this lets you see it's got the 2 jet engines in it. This is a military drone. I wanted it to not be that visible. So I put these 2 propellers on here. These propellers take ambient air and blow the air across the exhaust vents of these 2 engines. What I'm trying to do is wipe out the thermal signature of this drone. I think that the skin of the drone and the wing should be composite, which should lower its radar return. Here we have 2 people in it, but there's plenty of room down there for other people, and it's sitting next to the little drone. Again, this is a 6-foot tall person. This is the little drone, has 1 engine in it. These drones are made where they just land on their feet and they go straight up, and then they turn over and they bring themselves into horizontal flight and they start flying. And this is an image where they have taken off. Here is the little drone. Here is the big drone. The purpose of this drone, I was thinking that this drone would be a useful drone for the situation of people where United States military forces are behind enemy lines. Either they went there and something is wrong, their mission is not working like they wanted, or perhaps they were flying and their plane got shot down, they parachuted out, they're behind enemy lines. And the purpose of this drone, remember, these are drones, so they could be autonomous. There's always a team of people available to go get American soldiers who are behind enemy lines. But this drone could simply be, here it is on the ground. Let's see here. Here's one of them on the ground with its feet down, and then it's lifting itself up off the ground. It's folding up its feet, and now it's flying away. And this drone could do this with nobody on board, and it could fly to the soldier behind enemy lines, put its head up and its tail down and land. The soldier could get on board and it could fly off. I'm thinking to create a kind of a fictional story where the briefing is going on about the team that is going to rescue a pilot whose plane was shot down. He parachuted out. They're in radio contact. The commanding officer of the rescue, recovery, resuscitation team is saying, well, we have these new drones. The military gave them to us. They're great. We're so happy we have them. And the sadness of this situation is, when talking to this pilot, he thinks his leg is broken. He said he has a bad cut on his arm. And, you know, we would love to use these drones. We haven't actually used one in a real mission yet, but we're not going to be able to use them for this one because he's not going to be able to get in it. And as he, said hello to his team and was talking about this rescue recovery mission, he mentioned the people that are there. One of the group of people that are there, because they have representatives from all different types of capabilities, including special forces. And I was in the Navy, so the special forces could be Army, could be Marine, could be a Navy, and it just depends on who got rotated into the team. And in this story, it was 2 SEALs, and he's talking about going to get this guy and that they wish they could use the drone, but they can't because he's injured. And the SEAL steps forward and says, well, sir, I'll get in this drone and fly with it to that man or that lady who's there in the forest injured, and I'll get out of the drone and get that soldier, bring him back to the drone, and we'll come back. And this was greeted by the commanding officer of the rescue team with a kind of a surprised look, like, well. And the other SEAL steps forward and says, put me in the other drone. I'll stay above them. I need a laser designator and a 50 caliber BMG, and I'll be on the lookout for enemy forces. And if they try something, I will make them decide to perhaps leave everybody alone. And I think that would be a great story. It would be fun, the concept, and this helps to just demonstrate these drones. It lands, the SEAL gets out, he goes in the forest, he's got his weapon out, and he's looking, and he sees a person. He turns out on the radio that what he sees is a woman, a village, local native, with his radio. And it turns out that the messages had been text messages, and he's deciding what to do, gets up to that lady and is speaking to her. And it turns out that the injured pilot is actually in the village. He's more injured than it sounded like, and they've been taking care of him. And so the SEAL says, all right, well, I got to go to the village and get this guy. And he calls to the main group, and the plan is that this drone will fire up its engines and leave and go back to U.S. territory or U.S. controlled territory. And what's funny, the second SEAL will say, there's no way in the universe that you're doing this by yourself. He said, give me 10 minutes, I'll land my drone, and we'll both go get this guy. And both of those drones then, as autonomous drones, fire up their engines and leave. And when these guys are ready and get this pilot back out into the forest at this location, the two drones will come back and land themselves, and they'll get the guy on board. I think that's a great story too. These again are rendered images from Keyshot. You can see here's the two guys inside the bigger drone, and you can see if you look inside of this, there's another guy in here lying down. And he is the rescued pilot that they went and got. It's got its little legs all folded up. This was a view that I did just to show these smaller propellers that are mounted external to the drone, where the flow of air from these smaller propellers goes across the exhaust vents of these Rolls-Royce Allison 250 turboshaft jet engines, again, to get rid of the thermal signature. I wanted to show that when you come up to the drone and it's standing there, you're actually under it looking up inside of it. Here's the door, and I lowered the opacity of the drone so you can see what's going on. The door is open. These are the two SEALs up front, and they're going to crawl in this thing and get into the drone. Now, I would put in here a hoist or a winch system and some harnesses where the winch would send down a hook, because you're standing looking straight up at this. Here's what I'm talking about. Here's the door. It's open. And I know that there would be people who say, well, no, who would want that drone? But these are for military people who are active and fit and in shape. And it flies. It can go really quick. It can take off and get to this person behind enemy lines almost before the enemy even knows about it. And it lands itself, and he gets himself over here, a perfectly healthy person, and he could get in here and just shut the door and hang on. And there'll be a little mini control panel here, and he'll say, go, go, go. This thing goes up in the air and then converts itself into fixed wing horizontal flying, and he can just crawl on his hands and knees up to those chairs. And so I'm not too troubled as a military drone that this might not be fully comfortable, because I'm pretty sure most soldiers facing being a prisoner of war would be like, yeah, you land that drone, I'll get in it, don't you worry about that. And so it makes it so much simpler, more likely to launch itself. Another advantage of the 4 independently adjustable legs is this drone can land on uneven surface or tilted land or rocky land, because you can run a computer program where it allows these legs to come down in a manner where the drone remains standing vertically, but the four different legs are not necessarily all at the same location, like on this completely flat surface. There are two other drones that we want to discuss. Remember, we are talking about the hydraulic bent axis hydraulic motors running these propellers. So we've got the power. We just don't have to worry about it. We don't have to worry about a battery. We don't have to worry about wires and power controllers. We got plenty of power. You can get whatever amount of horsepower you want, you can get with these hydraulic motors. And I think there's some advantages to a plane that already exists. It already flies. They don't have to create it. And actually, a lot of these planes, if they're not completely maintained and they're old, they lose their certification for human flight. And they would be a fantastic plane to get for testing purposes, just to figure out how to make this drone system work. And all you're doing is you're putting enough propellers on this drone to let it fly straight up. Once it gets straight up, again, I've talked about this already. This is a tilt rotor system, so it tilts down this propeller. This is a pulling propeller, tilts this propeller down, and it starts pulling this flying aircraft forward. You get enough airspeed, you get enough lift, that the lift created by the wing is sufficient to hold it up, and that is so much more efficient. And you would use these two. Now, these propellers in the back here are pusher propellers, and the reason for this is this metal bar supporting this propeller is the same bar that's supporting this propeller, and this propeller swings itself up this way and is pushing. And these can be, well, there's a lot of ways to manage these. It's a different topic, but my real thought on this is these two will generate enough horsepower to pull this plane along. These four will bring themselves to horizontal thrust, and these might be running at 8 or they probably need to be at 1700 RPM to get it off the ground. Then they're running about 1000 or 900 RPM to let it fly through the air. These four, I would run them at like 150 or 200 RPM. They're running just fast enough to generate thrust equal to their drag, so that they are not constituting a drag on the plane. And that lets it just fly along. It does use up some additional fuel, but you're not fighting with forcing the plane to fly through the air and dragging these propellers through the air. But this is a plane that you hit the button and it goes straight up and then it starts flying. And I think, I put these in here just to show where is the area of effect of these propellers. I just want to be sure they didn't run into each other. And so this is the Cessna 172. Again, this can be brought up straight up into the air with, I think, about a 900-pound payload. That would be, I think, people plus fuel, maybe 1,000 pounds. And it uses only one of the the Rolls-Royce Allison 250 turboshaft jet engines. And I did want to show you that I found these. You can get on the internet and get scale drawings of what this Cessna 172 looks like. And so I took the 172 that I created and I inserted it inside of SketchUp into these drawings to show that the plane that I drew is about the same size. It's the same plane as the Cessna 172. Here's I think this is Argentina, but here is the real Cessna 172. I just thought I'd let you see that. I just wanted to let you see, this is the larger drone of this design. There's no tilt rotors, there's no tilt anything. Here is a de Havilland DHC-2. It's a unimproved runway, wilderness flight, taking people and supplies and equipment into areas that are not very well, they're just not a paved runway with radar and instrument landings and all that. They consider it a bush plane. They say this is the finest bush plane that's ever been made. And so I wanted to get this converted to the VTOL drone concept. And here I'm showing this de Havilland. The commercial version of it was called Beaver. De Havilland named their planes after animals. So this is the de Havilland Beaver. I put 2 of the Rolls-Royce Allison 250 C28 turboshaft jet engines in there. This is the manifold that allows control of these propellers, the motors of these propellers, and this is just showing the piping. I'm going to get into all of this in a separate video. Here is the little guy sitting in here. He's looking out through these windows, and I made it transparent so you could see what's in there and how big it is. It has the same concept as before of 6 propellers. This is a pulling propeller, that's a pushing propeller, and they can rotate down. It's exactly the same thing as there's enough space in this one to put the 2 other propellers back here. And they do generate a torque on the tail. The tail fin will have to be increased in strength. And I put these bars in here to give it the ability for this to lift up. This is a lifting propeller, a pulling propeller. That's a pushing propeller. And these are the 4 different drones that are available. And it's very interesting. I'm not in combat, so I don't know. I have an imagination image of a briefing, a Zoom meeting where all of the outlying, isolated, small military outpost commanders, captains, and majors were brought together, and the senior theater command are saying, look, we got these drones for you, and we're going to give you 3 of them. You can have 3 of them, and they're for you, and it's a new program. And the commanding officers of the outposts are like, okay, who is in charge of these drones? And the senior leadership at the central command will say, you are. And the commanding officers of the outpost will say, well, who decides when it's going to be launched? And they say, well, you do. And they say, well, what do we use it for? And they say, you can use it for whatever you want. So we can carry equipment and supplies? Yes, you can. We can carry ammunition? Yes, you can. We can move injured troops to an area of higher medical care? Yes, you can. Well, if we have this drone, are you going to stop supplying us with combat air support? No, we're not going to do that. It's just you have this drone at your base. Well, are you going to come and get my drone and go use it for something else? No, we're not. It's your drone. If you need it, you'll have it powered up and flying in 10 minutes. You don't have to, you of course can call us for help. We're happy to help, but it's not going to be waiting 45 minutes for air availability to get there. Well, are we going to have weapons in this thing? Can we deliver weapons fire against the enemy? And I'm going to talk about that. I think that could be done. I don't have that completely worked out, but we'll get to that. But the answer from the Central Command is going to be, yeah, you want to put weapons in there? Do it. And he said, the reason we're having this briefing is to say to you, of the 3 drones, and these are autonomous drones. So when you decide which 3 you want, then we're going to have at Central Command Headquarters Airfield, we'll have 3 of these drones take off. A 4th one will take off. That 4th one will have a pilot in it and a telemetry manager, and we'll take all 4 of them and fly them to your base. And then one by one, the 3 of them will land on your base. There won't be anybody in them. And we will take the 4th drone with the pilot and the telemetry controller person, and we'll turn around and he'll fly back to Central Command. And your 3 drones will be sitting there on the ground ready for you. But we, Central Command, we plan to supply you with fuel, and we plan to give you permission to use it. We do not have a plan to take it from you or tell you what you can do with it and what you can't do with it. We're having this meeting right now to ask you, which of these drones do you want? It's your choice. And again, here it is rendered in a KeyShot. These are the intakes. These are not guns. These are the intakes of those engines. And we do have an image that we rendered from I did make the body of it completely less opaque, almost transparent, so you can look around inside it. Here is the pilot, if you have a pilot. And I'm just giving you some feeling for how much space you have in here. This is the rendered image. This plane, it was created by de Havilland. It's now owned by Viking. Viking stretched the nose of it. It may be that these 2 Rolls-Royce Allison 250 engines can be moved up. They're 600 horsepower each, so this is a 1,200 horsepower plane. It was initially set up, the plane weighed 3,000 pounds and it could carry 2,100 pounds of fuel or payload. Combined takeoff weight, 5,100 pounds. Viking, who now owns it, they took it from de Havilland and they brought it up to a takeoff weight of 6,000 pounds. And the issue becomes, first of all, would those commanders even want this? I think they would say, yeah, we'll take that. And the next question would be, well, which one do you want? And it just seems to me, it's a lot like the child in the bakery. I wish I knew. I think all of the commanders would say, we want the big one. We get 3 of these? And the answer is, yeah. And so that's the 4 drones. And that's my discussion of what's going to be available and how it's going to be used. And our next video on this, I'm going to, I think, just make up a story of what it would be like when this project of creating and handing out to these isolated outposts this new capability. But that's the next video.